Hello, and welcome to another programming themed musing on. So as often the case when I go out for a morning walk, I will sort of think about videos that I've already recorded and think about what I learned during the recording, if there's any spin-off things I fancy doing. And what had happened was recently I was doing I suppose a sort of sub-series, if you like, called Reasons and Resources, where I was talking about learning Erlang, and I mentioned the resource Tutorialspoint. And in the course of doing that video and then going out for a walk and sort of mulling over it and then thinking about the Stack Overflow results for 2024, I thought, what I should do to really give a good idea about what's now available on Tutorialspoint, because it's a while since I looked at it originally, way before I was doing the Learning Erlang episode, and I was curious to see for the top paying and the most popular for the 2024 results, like what was on Tutorialspoint. Now, if you haven't seen the other videos or you're not familiar with Tutorialspoint, firstly you might want to watch both of the videos, the one on learning Erlang resources, but particularly the Stack Overflow video I did about the results for 2024 versus previous years. It's quite educating in terms of it, or educational in terms of sort of giving you an idea of what's changed in popularity and best paying over several years now that they've been running the Stack Overflow questionnaire. So here's Tutorialspoint. This is the sort of main home page, and quite a lot of this is paid for, but there's this huge section under library which has all these tutorials. Now, it's not just computer related information, so you can see it's all organized by different things. I've got Java technologies, big data and analytics, Python, web development. Because of the way it's organised, what they do is in some instances where it's appropriate, they sort of double up an entry. So you might find we've got Ajax under web development and it could possibly be somewhere else. Or another good example, where was it now? I did notice there was a couple of things here. They've kept some things away from being duplicated up in the programming languages section. But there's definitely a few things around here that end up in multiple places. Like I think if you do a search on here using just the search facilities in your browser, under the find and edit bit, you'll find that Unix is mentioned several times as well. So a little bit of doubling up here and there where it's appropriate. And, here's another example. So you've got CGI with Perl under this section, but it's also under the scripting section as well, under there. So just be aware of that. Now, here's some stuff I prepared earlier. So originally I was going to shoot this, just dive straight in, and I started to do that, and then I thought, no, I'll just open everything I want to talk about. But anyway, firstly, loads of stuff on here, and not just coding stuff. And we'll go through and we'll look at, the basic format so we can get an idea how consistent this is from technology to technology that I'm going to be covering. So there's 20 plus tabs open up here. And this is if I bring on the screen, this is the list I put together from my spreadsheet. So I'm just going to deal with the top 10 top paying languages from 2024 from the Stack Overflow survey of that year, and then the top 10 most popular languages from 2024 as well from the Stack Overflow survey. Interestingly enough, with the top 10s, I haven't got any doubling up, so what's in here doesn't appear in here and vice versa. As you look down beyond that, and I think now there's about 50 listings, you're obviously going to have some things appear, or a lot of things, appear in both lists if you go down far enough. So first up, we are going to talk or have a look at Erlang. Also, as we go along, we'll just check. So this is really handy. Anywhere where it says live demo or something similar, it bounces you out into this. So this is an online system where you can put your code in. And for a lot of these, and we'll see as we go through, it's not just a REPL. So sometimes when you're learning a language, you'll come across the term REPL, where you have like this sort of command line feature that you can use to play around with programming language elements. Here what we've got is a sort of online environment where you can actually put out the code. Now, of course, it's a lot simpler than having a local IDE, but for the purposes of the training materials, it's really useful to have a feature like this. So my point is, you can go through and use these resources and not have to install anything on your machine to learn a language. Obviously, I would recommend that you do install things like IDEs if you're so serious about a language. But if you just want to toe dip and say, oh yeah, I want to take a look at Erlang, you can also experiment with the code and change this up. You can write your own code, run it, and providing you don't get sort of too involved and it doesn't push it beyond whatever libraries, whatever built-in libraries are there, you should be able to run the code certainly that you're experimenting with. You'll notice that if you leave it, it will warn you haven't saved it. Most of the time I'm playing with this like this and just hacking around. I don't bother saving anything, but obviously you need to set up an account, log in to be able to do that. But you can see here on the Erlang one, I mean, we'll see the consistency of the tutorials here, but you've got an overview of the language, the environment, so there's instructions on how to do an environmental setup, which is really cool. So if you do want to set up that locally, obviously I always advise, if you're going to do setups, to actually visit the main website for the programming language, because there may have been updates since then. But yeah, you can sort of go to that and just recheck to make sure nothing's changed too much since these tutorials were written. You get the basic syntax, how to use the shell if you do want to use a shell or a REPL type thing. So it gives you examples about that. And you can obviously next through this as well and just jump down this way. And pretty soon you're actually getting into some code examples. And if you want to run the live demo, you can. If you want to have this off on a separate screen, so you've got two screens, you can obviously open it up, drag it over, and then start recoding in the second screen. Like actually practice typing this instead of just running it straight from the live demo. So I can take this, my point is, I can then drag that onto my second screen here, and then when I get onto the next example, I can maybe type that in instead if I want to, and then play around with stuff. Try messing around with this based on what you've learned already. So yeah, so Erlang looks pretty good there. Let's move on to Elixir. So similar sort of layout, home, overview. This is what I like about these, is it looks like there's consistency in the tutorials. So data types, variables, operators, pattern matching, decision making, strings. As you get down further, you'll probably notice between different tutorials the sort of features in the language may well change, but no doubt these things will be fairly common to the languages. And then you also find that you hear lists, tuples, those sort of things mentioned a lot. You can see it's pretty comprehensive. You've got additional resources. And again, if I want to, just to prove, yeah, there is a live demo for Elixir. There is also a separate compiler section on here where you can go through and you can look up and see if there is an online compiler on Tutorialspoint for the programming language. But it was just quicker to do it this way as I'm going through each one. Clojure, this is a language I'd like to revisit. I spent a couple of weeks, a couple of months just going through this and kicking the tires. So it goes through again, home, overview, environment. Yep, this is the environment that I use. So I did actually install Clojure on my system. But again, if you don't want to go down that route, at some point in here you can see we've got our live demo, Also, it talks about the REPL here for experimenting with code. So Leningen has its own REPL, as do other languages have similar things, or command line, sometimes they just call it. So yeah, so you play around with that. Again, you can see the usual suspects: operators, loops, decision making, functions, recursion, strings, lists, we saw in the previous one. Now the odd one out here is nim. I wasn't able to find nim anywhere on the website, so this one you're on your own. But there you go, there's the article. I'm going to include links to all of these just to make it easy for yourself in the description. So then we move on to Ruby. Next on the top paying 2024 list, so what's that number? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, usual suspects. Look, it's all nicely organised here. Yeah, environment setup. If you want to set up Ruby, different operating system setups as well. And again, like I said, it's worth going to the site and just checking out that these installations are accurate. Bit about different editors, interactive Ruby as well. So again, you know, their version of I suppose a REPL command line that you can use. So yeah, so instructions about that. And then as before, if we come down here, let's just see. Now with Ruby, I'm wondering if we have got, oh, we do have a live demo for Ruby. So yeah, there we go. And again, you may find as you use this compiler may have certain limitations with it being online. So we get on to Perl, which is an interesting language to play around with. Yeah, designed for text processing. I dabbled this in, we'll come on to a moment because there's two variants on here. So there's just learning the Perl language. And again here, you know, how to set the environment up if you need to do that. Syntax, bits about data types, variables. Be interesting to see if there is, oh, there we go. Live demo for that, cool. But then they've got a tutorial called Perl and CGI. So you may find that certain tutorial sections from the original Perl, you know, just learning Perl, it is repeated, but you may find that there's certain thing here that is specific about using Perl. Where's it gone? Let me just go back a step here because I think I've inadvertently jumped across. Does it? Yeah. So the Perl and CGI tutorial, sorry, I needed to be at the very start of it. So yeah, Common Gateway Interface. So this is the context in which I sort of learnt Perl. Now, it looks like once you get beyond this opening section, it's quite possible that the two tutorials are, yeah, similar, if not the same. So yeah, just make a note of that. But the first way in, so let me just make sure I've got that right. Yeah, that's the important bit, to know a little bit about CGI for this particular application of Perl. So yeah, cool. Perl, there we go. I think that's right. Jumped around quite a bit here. Let me let's make sure I've gone back to the start on everything if I need to jump back to any of these for any reason. There we go, just tidy that up a bit. Okay, Perl, Scala, here we go. So, yep, Scala tutorial. It's laid out a little bit different here, you can see. It's grouped, but same sort of idea. Overview, features, environmental setup, the build tool, basic syntax. I've got stuff about the data types. If we go down here, see if we can find, okay, do we have, so we don't seem to have found a compiler for this yet. So it looks like there might not be one, maybe. And that might be because of just the way in which you have to, you know, run Scala. So it may not be as simple as running, you know, an online compiler stroke interpreter for this particular language. And I'm trying to remember when I did Scala what extra hoops I had to jump through, but it's not a problem because there's instructions how to set up environment setup. Yeah, it runs on the in the Java virtual machine. So yeah, and if I out of curiosity, we'll try. Just jump. No, sorry, hang on. Going to see if I can just try something out for my own satisfaction. So if I go into compilers here and just try and see if we've got anything about. Okay, so there is one. So we do have an online Scala compiler. So maybe it was referenced somewhere else. And I just didn't spot it. Was it in the overview? This is the question. Sometimes where there's a hello world. Okay. Basic syntax, no? Interesting. Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, so that one does have a live demo. Okay, so there is a live demo, but it doesn't look like they use it all the time. All right, good to know. So yeah, you might find that there's only a certain section where it references a live demo. Okay, Apex. Oh, this is this proprietary language by Salesforce. Okay, it's interesting to see they have this then. That's cool. So I don't know if they'll have, be interesting if they have a online compiler then. So environment. So this might be a bit tougher if you don't have access to Salesforce. Yeah. So this could be the one that's fairly tough. So let's just see what we can see. Probably this is the one that I think is going to be hardest to actually have an online one for. Let me do a quick search on here. I don't know why this is being a bit slow. There we go. Let's just run Apex, see if we can see it. No, yeah, that makes sense. Same with Nim, yeah, which we already know wasn't on there at all anyway. But we do have some tutorials here, so yeah. But I don't know with this. I don't know much about Apex, so I'm not sure whether there's like a sort of what do they call it, like a demo version or something you can just learn the language in without having to buy the platform. So anyway, I'm sure anybody that's interested can dig through this and find out and do the research and see whether that's possible. I know when I was learning on certain third-party platforms, you could sort of you could download like a nerfed version of stuff to to do this. It looks like there's a developer console. Yeah. Okay. So some homework there. Okay, F#. Yeah, again, overview, environmental setup. Yeah, program structure. Oh, we have a live demo. Cool. Lisp. Yeah, usual thing again. Quite a different syntax. If you've never sort of done something like Lisp, yeah, it's quite different. But yeah, I mean, again, there's connections between Lisp and Clojure. Oh, yeah, we have a live demo for Lisp. Looks like they're using PHP to do this, to facilitate this in some capacity. Okay, what else? JavaScript. No surprise there. Yeah, usual things. I mean, some of this stuff is obviously incredibly detailed. So yeah, you can go down quite a big rabbit hole. And there's quite a lot of tutorial stuff. A little bit about, yeah, making sure you've got built. I mean, JavaScript's built into the browser, so you can see the approach here is slightly different in terms of learning it. And so within this, I'm assuming there's going to be no, oh, here we go. Yeah, so we do have a JavaScript editor compiler thing where you can execute code. There you go, if you want to do that. Now, obviously, that's going to be a slightly different experience than if you're doing it in a browser, but it does allow you to play around with the code. HTML. There's just HTML. I think there's one just called HTML, and then there's specifically HTML5 as well. So yeah. And here again, you know, we're doing this in a browser. So this bit's slightly different starting off. We're not like installing an IDE for this particular thing. It doesn't talk about it, but that's not to say you can't install, you know, HTML editors, WYSIWYG editors to do HTML. But this is obviously teaching you the underlying language. In here, it's be interesting to see how they handle this. Oh, here we go. Yeah, again, there's a compiler, and you get a preview. I mean, well, sorry, they're calling it, no, not compiler, editor. Yeah, so the code's being passed, and this is what you get when if you passed it through a browser. HTML, CSS, cascading style sheets. So most of the time I've learned, these three I've learned together, like JavaScript, HTML and CSS, except in the early days. So I learned HTML first, but generally, if you're learning it now, I think in every course I've done where I've had to do HTML, it's been alongside learning CSS and JavaScript. But in the early days, I basically just learned HTML. I can't even remember what version it would have been back then, but yeah, certainly not HTML5 anyway. So with the CSS, it's interesting to see what they're going to do here. Okay, so you've got, how have they executed this? Oh, I see. So they've got the style sheets like in line. At some point, I'm assuming they're going to talk about using actual CSS files. Yeah, but I'm assuming there's a limitation of how they can do some of this stuff. Yeah, so there you go. Yeah, so the style sheet here, we've got all the styles inside of here, inside of the actual header. These could be placed in a CSS file, and in here you can reference that. But yeah, that's how they're doing it. Okay, good to see. Yeah. So, what did I just do there? I clicked the wrong thing. Oh, you can actually do it from here as well. Curious. Is that behaving in a weird way? Preview. Okay. Not sure exactly what's supposed to happen there, but it looks like you can, yeah, you can edit these anyway. So I keep forgetting with this one, you know, it's embedded in here. So can you do this? Yeah, you can. Okay. Whether or not that would change anything. What if I do this? Is that any different? Yeah, I don't think it's going to do what I thought it was going to do there. So again, something else that you need to play around with. Do I do that? Nope. Okay. Yep, so it looks like that. I'd have to work with that to find out how you could effectively use that. So that's our first one where there's a bit of a question mark. And that's probably more due to me not, you know, ever trying to use the interface here for CSS, because I think most of the time I'd use HTML, CSS, I'd use it through, there was an online resource I did use one time for it, and I just can't remember what it was. When I was doing the Harvard CS50 course. But I know we were using an online version of Visual Studio Code, but for one particular course we actually went out and used something else when we were doing the web design components. So, yeah. Okay, next up off the list we have Python. Again, sort of back to the same thing we've seen before here, as we've, you know, moved from the web technologies back to programming languages that use a sort of IDE, more akin with programming languages that aren't web technologies. Although obviously Python is used in web development, but what I'm saying is not necessarily like, you know, the more the things like, you know, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So with this, I'm assuming this is fairly easy to do running online. Python interpreter, virtual environments. They've got quite a lot of extra sections here for Python. Oh, there we go. So we got a Python compiler. Again, there's probably some limitations there, because there are just so many Python libraries, and I imagine this is quite long. Yeah. So this, yeah, there's tons of stuff to learn in Python. Yeah, all the object-oriented stuff, multi-threading, yeah. So there's bits about libraries, pandas. I wonder how they're handling that. Okay, so that's a whole, wow, that's a massive section in and of itself, not surprisingly. Oh, we do have a live demo, so clearly, pull the pandas library, and I'm not going to play around with this. Normally, at some point you have to, yeah, if you were using this in an IDE, you would have installed pandas on here. Yeah, I was expecting it to already be there, but again, yeah, I haven't used this online compiler that much. I'm just poking around a bit. So yeah. Okay, what have we got next? SQL. So they have, you know, plain, I suppose, vanilla SQL. If you just want to learn SQL, so here they have a compiler, and obviously they've got a table that they've, you know, down the side here, which is various tables and the schema. So that's good. They've got all that stuff. But if you want to, on here, there's all the different so MySQL. I think Postgres is on here as well. A few other things. So if you did want to do it through like a MySQL lens instead, you can, and or both. So yeah, but you'll probably find here, I mean, you know, the syntax, there's going to be, you know, no difference, very little difference, but there's obviously things to do with the way in which you are leveraging the MySQL platform that you would want to know. Yeah. So basically how you install it, set it up. Because of course, if you're, I mean, for me, if I want to play around with SQL outside of any online stuff, then, you know, I normally do MySQL as my local install because it's, you know, open source. So yeah. And I can remember playing around with stuff like MySQL and PHP and Apache many years ago. And at the time, you know, I was playing around with it on servers. A lot of that. So there was a neat package you could have, which had Apache, MySQL, and PHP, MyPHP, which is the admin console, all neatly wrapped up. So you could, you know, get your Unix server set up and then install Apache server and MySQL and PHP using the same package. So that was really cool. TypeScript. So again, got our overview, how to do an environment setup. They've set it up online. Yep, so TypeScript is a type superset of JavaScript that compiles to plain JavaScript. So there's some stuff here about why you might want to learn it. If you open up the compiler, oh, what happened there? That's interesting. I wonder if it's getting confused. Oh, there we go. I don't know why that one didn't work. Some of these might be broken. So there we go. We can run it. It is running in the online JavaScript editor. Anyway, and of course the tutorial will tell you the what are the differences between TypeScript and JavaScript. But yeah, again, it's going to cover the same sort of things because it's a subset. Right. PowerShell. So yeah, it's Bash shell. So I did find earlier there was a mention on here of a Bash compiler, and then couldn't find the Bash tutorial. And I don't know if I was imagining it, but I thought I saw a Bash tutorial on there. But there is a PowerShell tutorial. Yeah, this is fairly easy to run on Windows. I wonder if they've got a little online version of this, perhaps. I did a course. There was, I think, an edX course on PowerShell many years ago because I was curious about how it could be used in sort of system admin and various stuff like that. But certainly, you know, learning any sort of command line scripting language, regardless of what platform you do it on, it is really worthwhile from an administration sort of standpoint and automation standpoint. So yeah, I don't see a particular thing there, so I'm assuming this is sort of stuff you just would run on your local computer. We've got Java. Okay, surprise, surprise. So again, says, you know, bits about setting up the Java virtual machine, which you remember earlier I said, I think, was it Scala runs on that as well. So, and we've got an online Java compiler as well you can leverage. C#. Again, usual stuff: overview, environment, program structure, basic syntax, data types, type conversion, all the good stuff. So for there, what's the environment going to be? Yeah, the .NET framework. So instructions, a little bit of instructions on that. It's pretty minimal though by the look of things. Do we have a online compiler stroke? Oh, yeah, live demo. So yeah, interesting. Wonder how they're doing this anyway. So yeah, there are ways and means. C++. Again, how to set up an environment. And some of these languages are going to be a lot more, been around longer, so there's a lot more different environments you could potentially set them up in. And, you can be a bit loosey-goosey with what editors you use and compilers and how you do it, and whether you decide to sort of semi-automate compilation or whether you roll your sleeves up and start playing around with all manner of linkers and various other things. Individually. So you can see here how to compile and execute a C++ program. So again, in this, I'm assuming at some point they're running some sort of minimal online sandbox. Yep. There we go. If in doubt, always look for the Hello World one, and then see if you want to go back to the core. Then yeah, this is the place to go. I would definitely suggest learning C at some point. I dabbled in it for a while, and it was fun to sort of play around in this language. But what I found is once I learned C, it did make me want to just dabble around a little bit in assembly as well. Just more for just helping me understand how stuff worked under the bonnet. Yep. So again, yeah, online C compiler. So yeah, that's pretty hopeful. I mean, the resources are just mind-blowing. Whenever I look like this, I thought, oh, I wish I had this back in my day. I would have never gone out. Maybe that's a good thing. Or I don't know if it's good or bad. Probably would have kept me out of the pub, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, this is awesome. So yeah, no excuses. If you want to learn to code and you just want to dabble and you can't be bothered to install an IDE or anything, Tutorialspoint's definitely a good place to start. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I'll catch you in a future video.